Brian Dable has named a starter for the Giants' Week 2 matchup against the Cowboys, and it is, drumroll please, none other than Mr. Unlimited. Russell Wilson will remain the starter after Brian Dable left the door open for who the starting quarterback could potentially be in his press conference after the Giants' Week 1 loss to the Commanders. He said, quote, "We're going to get home, we're going to look at our game, we're going to watch the tape," and he was continually very non-committal to Russell Wilson and non-committal to anyone who would be the Week 2 starter. And of course, that bred some hope and optimism potentially in Giants fans that we could see Jackson Dart in Week 2. But instead, nope, Russell Wilson will remain the starter. Now look, Brian Dable said they were going to watch the film, they were going to watch the game, they were going to evaluate. I don't think that Brian Dable went back and watched the film and said, wow, what a great performance from Russell Wilson. We just have to make sure that he's our starter in Week 2. No, because Russell Wilson was not very good in Week 1. In fact, Russ was pretty rough in Week 1 against the Washington Commanders. But instead, I think Brian Dable watched the tape and saw that offensive line and said, yeah, no, I'm not putting my young rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart behind that offensive line in Week 2. The most important thing for the New York Giants, I've said it before and I will reiterate it over and over and over again. The most important thing for this team is the development of Jackson Dart. It's also the most important thing for Brian Dable's job security. And one of the worst things that you can do for a young quarterback is rush them in before they're ready, especially behind an offensive line that's without its starting left tackle, Andrew Thomas, and an offensive line that really struggled, specifically on the interior in Week 1. So I think Brian Dable's going to say, hey, we'll continue to let Jackson Dart cook and marinate on the bench. And until then, Russ will be our kind of plug and play guy. I know that everyone in New York is incredibly impatient, incredibly optimistic about Jackson Dart, but have just a little bit more patience because I think this is the right move.
Great, perfect breakdown by you. Agree with absolutely every portion of that. I will give you my first point of the day. Let's stick in the same NFC East. I don't know why anyone ever takes Howie Roseman's phone call, but somebody did yet again. Like, look, at this point, treat Howie Roseman the way you treat your ex. Just change the name of the phone, put a red flag up, and don't answer. But the Jags did, and now Tank Bigsby is headed to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 5th and 6th round pick in 2026. Now, Bigsby comes off of a year where he had about 700 yards rushing. We all saw the split in Week 1. It's obviously ETN's team. And if you're the Eagles, you're trying to figure out Will Shipley's got some health issues. You want to be as deep as you can at the running back position. All of this makes sense for absolutely everybody involved. I have no problem with the trade. It's just Philadelphia got better yesterday. That's a real headline. And we've joked about it on this show before, but it's true. Somehow, some way, when we're sitting there covering the draft every year, we reach the point where Philly's on the clock. And Howie Roseman does it. We all look around and say, how did he do that again? This is the same equivalent with an off-season acquisition or in-season acquisition at this point. As Tank, look, is not going to come in and suddenly replace Saquon. That's not the point. The point is the defending Super Bowl champions just got a little bit deeper because they understand that they are still in that window right now. And a 5th and 6th round draft pick might help them win Super Bowls in the future. But Tank Bigsby could help them win a Super Bowl right now. At the end of the day, anytime I'm making a trade with Howie Roseman, I'm just going to presume he's getting the best of it. And I'm going to presume today that the Eagles are a little bit better off. We're also finding out that Liam Cohen and his Duval stamp is being put on this team in every possible way. They've decided, the Jacksonville Jaguars, that they're comfortable with their depth at the running back position. They've decided they don't need Tank. Let's see if that decision puts a ring on his finger and what it means for the Jags moving forward. And that takes us, Caroline Fenton, to our top point of the day, Monday Night Football. We said it yesterday, no matter what, we were going to learn something. And what we learned is that not every primetime game has the same glorious drama that we got on Sunday Night Football. Look, I'm being kind here. But we saw 2 young quarterbacks going after it. And I genuinely don't know today, right now, that I feel any better about the Vikings or the Bears after what I saw last night.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of good and a whole lot of bad there. I think if there are any parallels from any of the other primetime games that we've seen this past week, it's just don't go to bed early. It would probably be the best message there. Some games better than others. Last night, a very strange game. But I think one of my biggest takeaways from last night is one thing that I've been saying, Fitz, you have been saying, and I think it's kind of been reverberated throughout football circles. It's In Kevin O'Connell, we trust. In KOC, we trust in Minnesota. He is widely viewed as one of the best coaches in the National Football League. And I think last night we saw exactly why. Look, JJ McCarthy looked rough in the first half, really for the first 3 quarters. There were several times I caught myself saying, Kevin O'Connell's putting his job on the line for this guy. The Minnesota Vikings invested their future in this guy. And I think following his career at Michigan, yes, he won a national championship, but he was less the captain of that ship and more of a passenger of that ship. I think a lot of us questioned, can JJ McCarthy really step up and put the game on his shoulders, put the team on his shoulders, and will his team to victory? In the first 3 quarters, decidedly no. But I think in the fourth quarter is really where we saw, okay, in KOC we trust. JJ McCarthy said in the post game that at halftime, Kevin O'Connell came up to him and said, you will lead us to a comeback. You will win this game for us. I think as a head coach, it's really important to understand what your team needs, specifically what your quarterback needs, and especially your young quarterback. I know JJ McCarthy is going into year 2 in the NFL, but this is really kind of his rookie season, right? He was hurt last year. This is his first in-game action. So I think Kevin O'Connell knowing exactly what his quarterback needed is part of the reason why he is such a great coach. I mean, I just broke it down. In the first 3 quarters, Minnesota, 122 total yards, woof, 2 field goals and a pick six. They were down 17-6 going into the fourth quarter. Out of their 9 possessions, 6 of them were 3-and-outs, and then 1 was the pick six. The fourth quarter alone, 183 yards, 3 touchdowns. Look, it wasn't perfect. They need to be better. There are a lot of things that I think Vikings fans are waking up saying, man, we got the win, but we were 3 of 12 on third down and 8 penalties for 50 yards. You found a way to win, but I think that fourth quarter comeback, I will give a lot of credit to JJ McCarthy for doing things that, frankly, I didn't think he was capable of in the National Football League, especially in his first start, and just seeing a masterclass from Kevin O'Connell.
At the same time, I question a little bit of what we saw from JJ last night because it looked so hard for 3 quarters, number one. But then number two, what you just referenced, that you're going to bring us back to win this game. Like he talks about his coach giving him a confidence boost. I watched the broadcast, and before the broadcast, Justin Jefferson was talking to Marcus Spears and Ryan Clark, and they were asking him about his young quarterback. And he took the time to point out, he just needs to go out there, be himself, and be confident. And that made me think about when I talked to Justin Jefferson for Yahoo Sports, and I asked him what he expected from J.J. McCarthy this year. And he said, I just need him to believe in himself as much as we believe in him. I think there's a trend here. There's a theme here. What we're finding, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we're finding out that there's a certain level of buildup that JJ at this point in his life seems to need from the people around him and the coaches around him. And that's fine, but that does turn into a tricky situation. There was one former quarterback in the NFL that was described to me by a front office member as an I love you man guy. He needed to be told how much he was loved. And if he wasn't told how much he was loved and appreciated, it hurt his confidence. You have to know that. And I credit Kevin O'Connell for being able to turn around and make that happen. But at the same time, what we have to acknowledge is that's part of his personality. I don't know what to make of that. And I don't know what to make of the game we saw last night, because certainly you're right. In the fourth quarter, he absolutely tore it up. He used his legs, and it was incredible to watch. But the first 3 quarters were the opposite of that. So how much of that is, the meltdown of the Bears, and how much of that is the rising of JJ? I truly think the best possible, the most honest way we can look at last night is with an incomplete. I don't know that we learned last night that J.J. McCarthy is going to be good enough to take the Vikings to the Super Bowl. And that is when you won 14 games last year and you were comfortable letting your quarterback walk and you take all this things, like you are in a Super Bowl window. I certainly didn't watch that game last night and say, that's a Super Bowl window quarterback. He's going to have to get a long way in a short amount of time to get there to me.
Well, and there's 2 important parts of this story, because yes, what we saw from JJ McCarthy in the fourth quarter it should give every Vikings fan a whole lot of optimism. That doesn't mean that we can just ignore what we saw in the first 3 quarters. Like, he is both. I think this Vikings team is both of what we saw. And you bring up, the confidence of it all. I do wonder how much of that is just JJ McCarthy is making his first few starts. Does he start to settle in a little bit more? Does he start to build his own type of confidence? Because I think we saw that last night in the fourth quarter. I think a big part of that fourth quarter comeback and JJ McCarthy starting to feel himself a little bit was starting to build off of the energy of what the run game was doing and what the rest of this team was able to do. So JJ McCarthy, obviously an incomplete. And it's the same thing with the Bears. Yes, it was a total second half meltdown. We did see some things that I think, flashed from Caleb Williams. That first throw in the first quarter to Roma Dunze, I thought was fantastic. And then he missed DJ Moore in the second half, in the fourth quarter, rather, a wide open DJ Moore, and Caleb Williams just misses him. Like, I don't care that you're the first overall pick. Like, that's a throw that any starting quarterback in the National Football League needs to make. So, yes, we saw some good, we saw some bad from both of these quarterbacks. I think it's a total incomplete from both of these teams because there were a lot of concerning things and maybe some good flashes that we saw. But you bring it up. I mean, a Vikings comeback in the fourth quarter is not possible without a second half meltdown from the Bears. And I give a lot of credit to Kevin O'Connell. I think very rightfully so. But I think we also saw that, even, starting quarterbacks need a ramping up period. Maybe first-time head coaches need to make some of those silly mistakes to be able to learn from them. Because last night, Ben Johnson looked like a first-time head coach. Several questionable decisions from him. The fumble review, when it was very obvious to, I think, everyone in the booth and us sitting at home. They even went to commercial. Then they were like, oh, wait, they're reviewing that. They burned a timeout that could have been incredibly valuable late in that game. And I think the biggest offense of the night is, the final 2 minutes of that game. Chicago kicks it into the end zone. And then Kevin O'Connell is signaling to Ty Chandler, like, hey, take it out, eat some of that time off the clock. It was less about the yardage, I think, and it was more about just eating time off the clock at that point. If you're the Bears, boot it out of the back of the end zone, kick it out of bounds, do something to stop the clock, because the Bears defense could have, ideally forced a 3 and out, or at least the Bears defense could have gotten the ball back, and maybe there's a minute left on the clock, and it allows Caleb Williams and this Bears team to at least do something in the final couple, seconds or final couple minutes of that game, and they didn't. I thought that was just a massive flub from Ben Johnson, and if that was Matt Eberflus, we would absolutely be tearing him apart for a decision like that.
Which is why, Bears fans killed me all summer for saying I think there's a huge but. Like, there's an acclimation period, right? Like, when you've got a quarterback that's learning Ben Johnson's language, and Ben Johnson, who's an unquestioned offensive coordinator, but now that's a totally different job. Like, he now needs to be a head coach, and that's everything that he's being asked to do is different now. So that's the hardest part about last night. Like, my biggest but for the Vikings was, how good is JJ McCarthy going to be? I don't know that we got an answer. My biggest but for the Bears was, what's the acclimation period going to look like for Caleb and for Ben Johnson? And in the first quarter, the second quarter, my God, Caleb and Ben looked like they were just Siamese twins speaking the same language, right? Like, it looked some kind of way. And I thought, yep, we have unlocked it. But then over the course of the game, as the pressure mounts, what happens? People go back to habits. We talk about that all the time. Like, part of what you have to work through is some of the things that were developed into you. I thought the broadcast on Sunday night did a great job of showing some of the things that Josh Allen has had to develop through, right? Caleb's got to develop through some of that. So where's the line between making the right play and then going out and just making a play? Where's the line between taking that big attempt down the field with DJ Moore, but at least keeping the ball in bounds from Davis shot at it? Like, the ups and downs of Caleb over the course of the game, the ups and downs of Ben Johnson. These are things that I think over the course of the season have a chance to normalize. But the problem is everybody wants it right now. We have so little proof of concept on what this is going to look like. I think the Bears, the only fair answer is that the Bears are a work in progress. And the only fair answer is that Caleb is a work in progress. And no, it's okay right now to say, like, things don't look as easy for Caleb as they do for Jaden, for example. And that's okay. Like, two things can be true. Stop and now look at it and say, what's this coaching staff mean for Caleb? I think the answer we got last night, Caroline, is like, over time, maybe it's going to be really good, but we don't know. And that's not as sexy, but that's the real answer of what we got between two division rivals in a game that means a ton for both of these teams.
Caleb Williams is so perplexing to me because he can make some wow, pop off the page. How many guys in the NFL can make that kind of type of throws? And then he doesn't take the gimmies. It is so.
That is the one thing. When he was coming out of college, I talked to somebody that scouted against him and coached against him. And he said, when you look at the film, the hardest part of Caleb Williams is that you will see plays that you won't see anybody else make. But then you ask yourself on that same play, why did he have to make it so difficult? There was an easy play right in front of him. You're right. There's just a part of Caleb Williams that I think is defined by making the difficult things or making the easy things sometimes unnecessary difficult.